Hello and welcome to my Christmas tree tutorial. Hopefully you have your patterns downloaded and your templates printed, ready for making. First job, check the test square is accurate to your ruler to make sure you've printed at 100%. Should your printer have left off a little bit of the seam allowance, don't worry, you can just fill it in. Get everything ready, your fabrics, your scissors, your marking tools, your pens. Following the pattern, decide which template you're going to use and simply draw around your template. Don't forget to mark the notches onto the fabric. Cut out how many pieces you need following the instructions. Pair together the matching fabrics, right sides facing, and pin together. The pattern already includes a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Then you're going to straight stitch all the way around the Christmas tree, starting at one notch, finishing at the next notch, and leaving the gap at the bottom. You can always draw on the seam allowance onto the fabric, or you could use your presser foot on your sewing machine. Make sure you back tack at the start and the finish of your stitching to make sure it's secure. Make sure you take care around the curves, stop and pivot if you need to. We've got our opening at the bottom. And now we are going to snip into our curves. So it's quite easy. You're snipping off the excess, you're snipping into the tight curves, little triangles. You're basically removing as much bulk as you can. You must be careful not to snip into the stitching line. I've done this before. If you do accidentally snip your stitching line, just go back, restitch a new line just slightly away from the snipped area. Just continue to remove bulk, because when you turn through it will look a lot neater. In the gap that we have at the bottom, you want to turn the seam allowance in really neatly and pin and iron. Give it a good press. Repeat for all pieces you have. Here's our lovely pressed trees with crisp corners. We're now going to stack the trees, whichever order you want. If you've got the same fabric, doesn't matter. If you've got different fabrics, you can decide which one lays on top of the other. Now make sure that you have the top and the bottoms matching. So that they line up nicely and pin together. We're now going to stitch right through the middle. To find the middle, you could fold in half, give it a good press. It's got a crease, you could follow that line. Or you could use your ruler and you could mark the centre with a pen that irons away or washes away. I'm using an iron away pen. Okay, so pin securely, making sure everything matches top and bottom. And then if you want to add any ribbon before you stitch down the middle, you can add it between the first and the last Christmas tree. Depending on your length, your ribbon, and you just pop it in before you sew. Okay, and then when we sew, we are going to make sure we back tack the top and the bottom to make it secure. So sew a straight stitch all the way down the middle, securing at the top and the bottom. Next we come to the filling. You can either use a soft fill that you use for soft toys, you could use wadding that you shredded yourself. Really spend some time filling the tree. Make sure you get into all of the points. You could use, I use the end of a knitting needle to help push it through because it's not too sharp, and hopefully I won't bust any seams. But you could use a chopstick, anything really that you can try and point, also your fingers. Okay, we've flipped over to the base of the tree, and now we have to close those gaps. So you need to do this with a hand needle and thread. You can use a slip stitch, ladder stitch, or you can simply do a really neat overcast stitch to close up the gap. Basically, we don't want to see too much of the stitches. So make sure you start with a knot, really secure. I usually do a couple of knots to start. Okay, here I am trying to show you how to do the ladder stitch. So you go in on the seam allowance, so you're inside, and you're going from one seam allowance side to the other. So then when you pull it tight, it looks like a ladder, and it's also hidden within the seam. This is the overcast seam, so if you can't quite get the hang of the slip stitch, then you can overcast. So simply really small neat stitches over the top of the two seams. So you pinch the seams together, make sure they're lined up, and then you just simply overcast. Use a matching thread and you can hardly see the stitch at all. In case you wanted to add anything extra to your Christmas trees, you could add sequins or beads or buttons. So this string of sequins could make a really pretty looking trim. Once happy with the placement, you could just hand stitch in place. Please do be mindful of using beads and sequins and anything small, because they could be a real choking hazard to young children and or pets. So just be mindful of who you're making this for and where it will live. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial that goes along with the pattern 3D Christmas tree from Lil Rocky Wear. Any questions or queries, give me a shout, happy to answer them. See you again soon.